Hello, I'm Matthieu. I will be the facilitator of your 2019 General Chapter, and I'm making this video to explain to you a few concepts behind the way we've been thinking about the General Chapter and the relationship between the Provincial chapters and the General Chapter. So to start with, let me present to you a model that can help think about, what is a congregation. Here I'm making this circle, this red circle, that I call the system. The system is the congregation. Okay, your congregation exists in a context. That's the green circle with the letter C, that's the context. So your congregation exists to have an impact in the context. That's your mission. That's why you exist. And over the years, over the decades, over the centuries, sisters have been joining the congregation to live the mission, in other words, to have an impact on the context. And this is the blue circle, and I wrote the letter P for persons. Okay, so we have the system that's made up of persons, and the system exists to have an impact on its context. Now, what's been happening over the years, over the decades, is that two things, well, obviously three things probably have evolved, but at least two key things have evolved. The context has evolved greatly. In other words, the world around you has been evolving, is evolving, and will be evolving. In 5, 10, 15 years' time, the world is going to be very different to what it is now. Hence the importance of understanding the context so that you can understand what is the mission that you're meant to be having in this emerging world. What's the impact that you want to have in the world, knowing that this world is evolving, is emerging. The other big thing that's changing is the P circle, the circle that's to do with persons. Okay, so here what we know about the trends is that the sisters tend to be aging, so your population tends to be older. There is a diminishment in terms of numbers, and also, in most places, there's a decrease in vocations. In other words, you have a system in which you will have less people in the future. So when you want to understand what's the impact you want to have in your context, in the world that's evolving, you also need to ask yourself, and who do we have to generate this impact? And then you have to make choices about where you want to do what. This is where we tie in with the General Chapter. And I'm going to use another model to explain to you, to present to you how we're thinking about the General Chapter, how we're designing it. The model I'm presenting now is called the U model, the U process, the U theory. It's called U because it has the shape of a U. That's, it's simple. That's why it's called U theory. In the U process, what we have three phases. Okay, we have a first phase that is called sensing. That's what we start the process with. That's what we will start the General Chapter with. The sensing phase is a phase where we sense the world around us, we sense the system in which we operate, we sense, in other words, the congregation, and also we sense the people. Who are they, who will they be, what are the trends? Okay, so the first phase of the General Chapter will be a phase where collectively the capitulants expand their sense, expand their awareness, their understanding of the world around you, who you are as a body, and who's making up that body. Once that awareness is expanded, once that you have sensed, you will be able to open yourself, or at least the capitulants of the general chapter will be able to open themselves to listening what God is calling you to in this emerging future. There will be probably two key questions. Who is God calling you to be? And what is God calling you to do in this emerging future? This is what in the U process we call the presencing phase. It's a made-up word. It's a word, it's not English, but it links to the word sensing and also to the idea of presencing, of making present, of enabling the emergent in the present moment of these calls that you will be opening yourself up to hearing. Once you've connected to the presencing phase, there will be a third phase, which is the realizing phase. In other words, crystallizing the orientations, crystallizing the calls into orientations, understanding a bit better, okay, what do these calls mean for us in the next 6 years? That's part of the realizing phase. And in the realizing phase, what you'll also be doing as a chapter is elect your next general team. Who do we need to lead us into the future, given what the calls are, given what we heard God calling us to. That's the realizing phase. Now, to move from the sensing phase to the presencing phase, there is a very important movement in the U process. It's called the letting go. The letting go phase, the letting go moment. In other words, once you will have connected to the emerging reality of your congregation in the emerging world, you will be invited to connect to what's becoming obvious that we can no longer continue to do. What can no longer continue into the future? What do we need to let go of? Hence this letting go phase. To connect to the calls of God, you need to clear the space. You need to be better aware first of what can no longer continue. If you want the new to emerge, you have to let go of the old. You have to let go of what can no longer continue into the future. And what I hope you can begin to sense is that this U process is very much a Paschal process. What needs to die first before resurrection? Okay, so this is the main movement of this general chapter. What is going to be very different this time round to what you've been used to in the past is that for you as a congregation, which means for all the provinces, for you as a global body, this is where the orientations for the future of what happens in the body, what happens in the congregation, this is where these orientations will be discerned. Okay, it's in the 2019 general chapter. In the past, what I understand is that you've been used to exploring, discerning orientations for the life in your province, in your provincial chapters, and making decisions then in the provincial chapters for the next 6 years of your life as a province. This time round, the invitation is to do very differently. The provincial chapter has a new role in the process. This new role is to prepare for the general chapter, and the general chapter is where the decisions, where the orientations, where the decisions are taken. And then after the general chapter, you can meet again as a province. For example, in a provincial, you can organize a provincial assembly, and then ask yourself, okay, given the orientations that came out of the general chapter, what do we decide, how do we decide to apply them, to implement them in our province. Okay, so again, I'm going to repeat myself. This time round, the decisions will not be taken at the provincial chapters. They will be taken at the general chapter, and then they will be translated into the provincial reality in an event that will take place a few months after the general chapter, that you'll be invited to organize, for yourselves after the general chapter in a provincial assembly, for example. So the role of the provincial chapter, if we continue to use the U process, will be to feed into the process of the general chapter. I'm going to use the U process to explain it, to explain the provincial chapter. We'll have again 3 phases. We'll have a sensing phase, we'll have a presencing phase, and we'll have a realizing phase. But here it's going to be very different, because, as I mentioned, I'm sorry I'm repeating myself again, but this provincial chapter does not exist to discern decisions, it exists to prepare the general chapter. So in your sensing phase, you'll be invited to increase collectively your awareness of your reality as a province, which involves your reality as sisters living in communities that are part of a province, and also a province that is part of a greater body, the whole congregation. Now, collectively, you'll spend a day or 2 days developing this awareness, sensing your reality as a province. You will ask yourself, again, given our evolving awareness of our reality, what's becoming obvious that can no longer continue into the future? What do we need to let go of? But this time, this is what you will be presencing. This is what you'll be opening yourself to listen to, opening yourself to hearing what God is trying to say to you through your new awareness of the reality. So these questions, what can no longer continue into the future? What do we need to let go of? You will be asking them at the bottom of the U in the presencing phase. And once you will have answers to these questions, then the realizing phase will be about, okay, well, how do we put this together so that our capitulants, or delegates, the delegates that we will elect, can bring it to the general chapter. Okay, so in the realizing phase, you'll be electing one or several delegates who will then carry the message that's come up in the provincial chapter about what can no longer continue into the future, what you need to let go of. You will be asking you these questions, what can no longer continue for us as a province, but also for us as a community, for me as a sister, what do I need to let go of personally? You will be diving into this reality and asking yourself these questions. Your delegate and your provincial will bring this to the general chapter, and they will put all of this together as a general chapter, sensing the reality of the whole body, developing a collective picture of the whole body. And so that's how they will be able to discern who is God is asking you to be, and what is God asking you to do in this emerging reality for us as a whole body. Okay, so just one more time, the main difference this time round is that the provincial chapters are not a place for decision making. They are not a place to discern orientations. Orientations and decisions are taken at the general chapter in 2019, and the role of the provincial chapter is to prepare the body for this collective discernment that will take place at the general chapter in September 2019. Okay, so I hope these models have helped you make sense of what you will be invited to engage in over the next few months. If you have more questions, you can find my email address through our media, for example, and I'll be very pleased to answer your questions. Okay, I wish you a good Provincial chapter. Thank you.